Hello everyone. In the present video, I will discuss about Randall Collins' conflict sociology. Collins discussed about conflict in the modern society, conflict in different kinds of the societies in different situations at different levels. Collins' conflict theory or conflict analysis is integrative in nature. Integrative in the sense he integrated his macro and micro ideas in his understanding. Macro aspect of the conflict theory mainly presented by Marxism, and his idea is the combination of micro aspect as well as macro aspect. That means he has not completely focused on the conflict at structural level, conflict at societal level. He also focused on conflict at micro level, conflict at individual level, how there may be conflict in the day-to-day interactions, how there may be conflict between two individuals, how there may be conflict in other realms, other domains of the human life other than economy, polity and all. If we see the Marxian and Weberian analysis of conflict, then we find that these analyses mainly focused on the structural aspect of the conflict and societal aspect of the conflict. Here Collins tried to integrate the macro and micro. So he specifically focused on the micro aspect of the conflict, that is conflict at micro level, and that may be in any society. Mainly he tried to understand this kind of conflict in the modern industrial society or modern capitalist society. Now I will discuss about four important points of Collins' conflict sociology or conflict analysis. First point is that conflict occurs because of the uneven distribution of resources, among the groups or among the people. When there is uneven allocation of resources, it may be because of the natural reason or maybe because of the man-made reason. If there is uneven distribution or allocation, that some people have more resources, some people have less resources, then there is the possibility of conflict. What are these resources now? Here Collins took the idea of Weber. Weber particularly mentioned about three kinds of resources: economic, political and cultural. Collins particularly focused on the cultural resources. According to Collins, the control over the culture, there is rituals, culture or rituals or traditions that actually maintains the solidarity in the society. The control over this culture may creates the conflict. That is, if a section of a group or a small group within a particular society or a community controls the culture and tradition and rituals, then it may creates conflict of interest. There may be conflict between two groups, there may be conflict between two sections or factions within a particular group. So Collins not just focused on this cultural resources, he also focused on the economic and political resources, that there may be conflict because of the uneven distribution of the economic resources, political resources and as well as the cultural resources. When a particular group have the more cultural resources, there is more control over culture, tradition or rituals, then this group may be dominant, other groups may come into conflict with that. So this is how there may be conflict because of the uneven distribution of resources. Second important point is that conflict occurs because of the mobilization of the opposite party. That means when there is conflict between two groups or two parties, and another party, that is opposite party, is mobilized. Mobilization is important. Mobilized, when a particular group is mobilized, then there may be conflict in any society. Two groups are living in a reciprocal relationship, in a friendly, amicable relationship, there may not be any conflict. But when there is a mobilization of a particular group, another group may comes up to oppose it, and there may be again further mobilization of that group, and there will be conflict. Now, what kind of mobilization? Mobilization may be at two levels. One is the symbolic and emotional mobilization, another one is material mobilization. Mobilization for material resource, material condition, and mobilization by emotion and symbolic identity. So, a group may be mobilized or integrated because of their emotion, because of their integrity with the group, because of their identity, symbolic identity, and another kind of mobilization may be because of the material conditions, that is common material conditions may leads them to get integrated and do a conflict of interest with other group. So, these two kinds of mobilization may leads to conflict in any society. So, that means conflict is not necessarily just exist in the economic structure, it may exist even in the simple society, in any particular community, within a particular community. When a particular groups or sections within a community develops and starts controlling the cultural and symbolic aspects of that community, there may be conflict. When there is a group who shares the political power, there may be conflict. When a particular groups in a society that shares a common economic conditions may be vulnerable or weaker sections, they may come into conflict with the affluent sections. So, this is how there may be conflict because of the mobilization. Third point of Collins' conflict analysis is conflict creates subsequent conflict. It means that conflict creates further conflict, and when there is a situation of conflict, each party feels that they are right in their conflict, because they remains morally superior, they remains morally strong and integrated and justify their act and move, because they feels it is for their own interest, because they feels that this conflict is for protecting their interest. So, this conflict may leads to further conflict. There may be subsequent conflict. There may be subsequent emergence of the conflict. Two parties are in conflict. Other parties may also come up and may create further conflict. That may be at macro level, even in the micro level. At macro level, if we see the terrorist organizations which also justifies their moves and comes into conflict with the authority, administration, state, bureaucracy, and there also creates the further groups which again starts conflict with another system. So, in this way, even in the field of economy, in the field of political, in the field of cultural system, there may be emergence of multiple groups, multiple parties, and that may start series of conflict. So, one conflict may leads to another conflict, or one group may creates another group, When a group becomes dominant, it may create a further group, and when the conflict between two groups occurs, that may develop further faction or section within a society. So conflict creates subsequent conflict. Fourth point of Collins' conflict analysis is that demobilization. Conflict may develop demobilization. Just like mobilization of resources, similarly there may be demobilization. So demobilization of two things mainly, demobilization of resources and demobilization of emotion. So according to Collins, the resources may be a condition that demobilizes the people, because when there is intense conflict, it may takes lot of resources. If the material condition is not good, that may leads to the failure of the conflict or the loosening of the conflict. And if the material condition is strong, the conflict may progress towards the more intensity. Similarly, emotion or emotional resource is also important. When the peoples were involved, the groups were involved in the conflict, they are emotionally motivated, emotionally charged. There may be further intensity in the conflict. If they are emotionally down, so there may be lack of intensity in the conflict, there may be loosening of the integrity in the conflict. So these are the micro and macro aspects of the conflict. So whenever there any conflict arises, for example, in case of the fourth point, so if the material conditions are strong for all the groups who are involved in the conflict may be intense. And if the conflict is for material conditions, that conflict may also be very intense. But ultimately the material resources will start weakening, and that ultimately leads to the weakening of the conflict. Similar is the case with the emotion. Emotional outbreak may also there, that may ultimately leads to the weakening of the conflict. So we may find this kind of pattern in the economic structure, in the political structure, and even in the socio-cultural fields of the society. So this much is the present discussion. I will continue this discussion in the next video. Thank you very much.